Here's Navarro on the run. Navarro's going to keep it. Navarro for 6. Touchdown, Bobcat.
I feel I had a hard time staying in my own lane.
Oh my goodness! Red Murdoch, pick 6.
Harvath inside the 30 to 20. Blake Harvath will score.
And Mendoza takes a big hit. He never saw it coming. Trey White got in there.
There's his man, Rucker. And nobody's going to catch him. Goodbye.
Intercepted. Tyree Skipper. Touchdown. Telly again, why not? A step forward and make it 2 for Telly.
Quarterback keeper. Showing off the speed. Steps on the gas. Untouched.
The G5 Hive. All G5 all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live, where we bring you the G5 college football coverage you love each and every week. I'm Luke, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justice. If you're watching us on X, or if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching us on X, please give us a follow, a like, and a retweet. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. All right, let's get into our waiver wire honey after week 3 for those who play college fantasy football. We're here to serve you too. Now, I'm just looking at what can help us for week 4 quarterbacks. Let me start here with Braylon Braxton at number 1. They've got La Tech this week. He's 28% owned. He scores, and the 6-point passing touchdown. So he scored 23.76 points against Mississippi State. Then they played JSU, 28.56 points, and then 23.86 points this last week against App State. He's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in each of the last 3 games, adding rushing yards on the ground of 58, 20, and 27 in those 3 games. Louisiana Tech has faced Southeast Louisiana, LSU, and New Mexico State. We've talked about how this defense is better against Logan Fife. Logan Fife threw for 281, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, good for 18.04 points. And then Nussmeier, they held him to 237, 1-1, good for 10.78 points. I think he can do something on the ground. I think if you need a safe floor, I think Braylon Braxton is your guy. I talked about Jalen Raynor earlier, that he's going to have a breakout week. Kennesaw State this week, 25% owned. He scored 33.5 points against SEMO, Southeast Missouri State. And then against Arkansas, he scored 10.8 points and then 21.18 points against Iowa State. We've got what Kennesaw State has done. In week 1 against Wake Forest, Ashford had 18 rushes for 42 yards and a touchdown. And then Merrimack, their quarterback, had 22 rushes for 59 yards and a touchdown. And then this last week, Fernando Mendoza, not the running quarterback that everybody else is, but he threw for 245 and 4. Now, Raynor's, he's mobile and whatnot, so I expect him to do a little bit on the ground and toss it around the yard. And then end up here with Bishop Davenport for South Alabama. We mentioned before they play Coastal. He's 11% owned. Coastal hasn't been very good. They've let up 293 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception against Hauser. Hauser scored 22.92 points. They held Charleston Southern to 55 yards passing, but I don't know how much I'd read into that. And then against Chandler Morris in Virginia, gave up 264 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Morris was also 5 for 50 on the ground, good for 27.56 points. And then it's kind of been a roller coaster for Bishop Davenport. They play Morgan State, 15.54 points. And then Tulane, it's 33.54. And then Auburn, 17.5. Coastal hasn't been very good. I think this is a good chance for you to fire up Bishop Davenport if you need quarterback help. Justice, who do you have?
All right. I got Jake Retzlaff, 23% owned. Tulane had the monster game this week against Duke, 42 points. He also had 27 points against Northwestern. He is a dual threat quarterback, gets it done in the air and on the ground. Now he does have Ole Miss this week, but I think Tulane can put points up against Ole Miss, and when a guy puts up 100 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground, like you can't ignore that. You got to roster him. Nick Minicucci, the next guy up. We've talked about Delaware. We've talked about Nick a lot tonight. He's one of our 2020 players. He's only 7% owned. He's had 2 games where he's put over 30 points. He's also a dual threat. Delaware has looked extremely, extremely good on offense, and we talked about a matchup against FIU this week, a big Conference USA matchup. And so I look for Nick Minicucci to have another big game this week. And then my last guy is Anthony Calandria, 25% owned for UNLV. We talked about this in the preseason about how UNLV, or Dan Mullen, the head coach there, is kind of a kingmaker, if you will, at quarterback. No more Alex Orji, as he's out for the rest of the year. So it's going to be the Anthony Calandria show. Again, he's another dual threat guy. He's gotten 20-plus points each week, and they play Miami this week. And so I think Anthony Calandria is in for a good game this week and for a big season. So these are all three of these guys can help you this week. All right, let's move over to our running backs. First running back, I don't think probably at some point this week he won't even be over. He'll be over the threshold, but as of today, he was only 29% owned. That's Sutton Smith at Memphis. 21 and 26 points. He's had 4 touchdowns in 3 games. He's involved in the passing game. As we mentioned, Greg DeRosier has been out. So you might want to pay attention to his availability. But I think regardless of if Greg's playing or not, like this is very much, a 1A, 1B, if you will. Sutton Smith is going to score points for you. Like I said earlier, Greg DeRosier is day-to-day. He is listed on the depth chart this week. Sutton Smith, Memphis plays Arkansas. Look for him to have another good week this week. Probably get you 60 yards and a touchdown on the ground at the bare minimum. My other guy probably won't be under the threshold anymore either after this week, and that's Rayshawn Luke, 29% owned at Fresno State. He has 2 games of 30 points. Now, he's not the lead guy. Bryce Donaldson's the lead guy, but Rayshawn's been involved. He's it's a run-heavy offense, so I don't mind having the second guy and such a run-heavy offense. And he's also involved in the passing game. This past week, he had 7 receptions. He's also averaging a touchdown every week. And as we mentioned, they got Hawaii this week, a big Mountain West matchup, big rivalry game. So look for them to feed both Bryson Donaldson and Rayshawn Luke against Hawaii. All right, this next guy, he is on a bye this week, but I feel like he's really underappreciated. You can't get a better floor guy, I feel like, and that's Alex Texa out of Navy, only 11% owned. He's the number 1 running back in a triple option offense, and I feel like the floor with him every week is 80 yards and a touchdown. That's 14 points. And so, man, I feel like I don't know he's ever going to get you 30 points, but he's going to get you 14 to 16 points consistently every single week, and that's a valuable asset on a fantasy team. Again, he does have a bye this week, but they do play Rice in week 5. Who you got for running backs, Luke?
All right, Kewan Owens, 9% owned, FIU running back. He scored 20.7 points against Bethune-Cookman, had 2 touchdowns, and then, of course, a matchup against Penn State, only 7.8 points. Won't hold that against you. And then 34.2 points against FAU, 2 touchdowns. Here, he ranks 5th in the G5 in total yards per game with 115.6. The opportunity is there with 16 touches per game. Delaware has allowed 116 yards and 2 touchdowns to Cam Edwards at UConn, and 123 yards and no touchdowns to Marquise Gillis. Who's that? He plays for Delaware State. I like Keelan Owens in this one. Braylon McReynolds, 7% owned for UL Monroe. They have UTEP in this game. He scored 21.3 points against Stephen F. Austin and then followed it up with a 4.3 points against Texas. UTEP has allowed Miles Davis of Utah State 12 rushes for 88 yards and a touchdown, plus 6 receptions for 61 yards. They've played 2 extremes, UT Martin and then Texas, so it's hard to kind of get anything out of that. So I really looked at that Utah State game. He leads the backfield with 18 carries, 137 yards. He's averaging 7.6 yards per carry. Plus, he's the only running back to catch the ball, 4 receptions for 19 yards and a touchdown. So if he can do something in that Miles Davis light, I think it would be a diet version of that. I like Braylon McReynolds this week. Then Jalen Dupree, Colorado State, going up against UTSA. I'm curious as to what this team is, what is Colorado State made of? But I liked what he did against Washington, 17.2 points, 15 rushes for 92 yards and a touchdown before kind of the dud of the 9.1 points against Northern Colorado. I think it was just a weird game for the team in general. He's 20% owned. You got Lincoln Pear rushed for 71 yards and 1 touchdown. Plus, Brad Jackson ran the ball for 34 yards and 2 touchdowns against UTSA. BFN is no Brad Jackson. Look for Jalen Dupree to get the ball early and often in this game. Plus, a bright spot as he leads the backfield in touches. Lloyd Avant took a couple touchdowns there. I think it was the Northern Colorado game, but he's leading this backfield in touches with 13 plus 2 receptions. So he's got 15 touches back there. And I like Jalen Dupree. A little bit worried. I'm excited to see what happens, but I think he's a good guy to get a lot of carries there at 20% owned. I really found a hard time finding running backs here.
The running back pool is pretty thin. I had some deeper guys too, but I felt like the 3 guys were the strongest 3. But yeah, it is running backs always very thin, man. Always very thin.
So let's get into where I thought there was quite a bit of names, and that's the wide receivers. I go with Chaz Nimrod. First of all, Chaz with no Z threw me off for a second, but we got there. Chaz with an S. They play South Carolina State. He's 6% owned. He's had 5 targets against Boise State, got 12.6 points. 5 targets against Florida, 5.4 points. And then 10 targets against Miami, 16.8 points. He's averaging 82 yards per game. He has an ADOT of 19.6 in that high-powered USF offense, 17th in the G5 in yards per game with those 82 yards. Bethune-Cookman saw Malik Huggins go for 8 for 148 and 2 against South Carolina State. I think Chaz Nimrod and this USF offense might be a little bit more potent than Bethune-Cookman. So look for Chaz Nimrod to have a good game here. Now, if you're still listening, if you're still there, Cade Harris, Air Force, Boise State, 23% owned. He is a wide receiver eligibility, but is averaging 8 rushing attempts per game through 2 games. I wanted to see it just another week, and he produced. He had 2 receptions for 63 yards against Utah State, but he had 8 rushes for 72 yards. Good for 17.5 fantasy points. And then his 8 rushes for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns against Bucknell, coupled with his 3 receptions for 83 yards and 1 touchdown, was good for 35.9 points. A guy that's getting you rushing attempts in the wide receiver spot. this is a good spot for Cade Harris. I am a little bit nervous about Boise State, but you might be able to pick up Cade Harris and use him throughout the year. Brett saying, hey, now we got to look at Jordan Napier. But, hey, I got you. I got you this week, Cade Harris. And then FIU is going up against the Fighting Blue Hens. Justice mentioned their quarterback in Nick Mitakuchi. I'm saying you got to pick up their wide receiver. Now, the wide receiver I'd pick up would be Jake Thaw. He's 3% owned, but he sat out with an injury last week. So in the event he is out again, Kyrie Duplessis is another name to know. I like either one of them this week, but again, I'm going to stick with Jake Thaw. 3% owned for Kyrie, 3% for Jake. Jake is the number one, but with him down last week against UConn, Kyrie stepped up big, went 9 for 161 and 1. Now, when you look at Thaw against Delaware State, he was 7 receptions on 8 targets for 92 yards and a touchdown, compared to Duplessis 7 receptions on 9 targets for 89 yards and a touchdown. Then against Colorado, Thaw was 4 receptions on 6 targets for 85 yards, no touchdowns, while Duplessis was 1 reception for 13 yards. And then this last week with UConn, with Thaw being out, Duplessis goes 9 for 161 and 1. Now, UConn has played FAU, and they gave Easton Messer went 6 for 64 and a touchdown, and then Jayshon Platt was 5 for 90 and a touchdown. 2 guys there for FAU FAU played FIU this last week, so the 2 guys were able to show out. So again, if you're able to play one of those, I'd pick Thaw over Duplessis, but if Thaw is out, I would play Duplessis. Thaw ranks 12th in the G5 in yards per game with 88.5, and Duplessis has 8 targets per game, which is 18th in the G5, and is averaging 87. So very similar, which is 13th in the G5. Justice, who do you have for your wide receivers?
All right. Well, 2 of my guys are on bye this week, but I just felt like they're too good. Like they need to be owned. But the first guy, when it's someone Luke can attest to this, that I was really high on this year. I drafted him wherever I could, acquired him wherever I could preseason, and that was Zion Booker at Tulsa. He's only 3% owned. That's shocking to me. He is clearly the lead dog in an offense that's going to have to throw the ball to win games. He's getting 10 targets a week. That means like at the 12-game season, he's going to get 120 targets. That's pretty massive for fantasy football. He's the focal point of that offense. He's got 18 points, 13 points, 17 points. They play a bad Oklahoma State this week. I'm not worried about him. I am rolling him out there wherever I have him. It's criminal that he's only 3% owned. These next 2 guys, they're both on a bye this week, but man, they are, we talked about them in our 2020 guys. And the first is Jaden Barnes. He's only 22% owned out of App State. 14 targets, 8 targets, and 11 targets. He is used heavily in the slot. Talked about him last week. He's pretty much guaranteed to get you 100 yards and a touchdown every week. 29, 21, and 23 points. And then Corey Milner, UAB, only 25% owned. We've talked the last 2 weeks, we've talked about how bad this UAB defense is. And they have to throw the ball. They have to score a lot of points just to make up for how bad the defense is. He's the number 1 wide receiver in this offense, and they pass it around so much. 9 targets, 11 targets, 6 targets, pretty much 80 yards and a touchdown each and every week. 19 points, 21 points, and 22 points. And he's not on a bye. I misspoke. He plays Tennessee this week. So Jaden Barnes is the only guy that's on a bye. All 3 of those guys, it's criminal that they're under 30%. I would expect, probably maybe Barnes and Milner will get over that threshold. But, man, Zion Booker at 3% is just insane to me. It blows my mind that he's only 3% owned. All right, let's move over to the tight ends. And talking about slim pickings, man, like tight ends, it's pretty rough too compared to it might be even rougher than running backs. But I got two guys here for you. Jaron Johnson, Bowling Green, 3% owned. Hopefully, like you guys, if you listened to us and watched our Worker Bee series, you would know about Jaron Johnson because there was a feeling that everyone was talking about Arlis Boardingham, the transfer from Florida, but there was a feeling back then in that preview that Jaron Johnson was might end up being the guy at tight end for Bowling Green. He's gotten 3 targets, 7 targets, 4 targets. The points, as you might expect with a tight end, are very up and down. 3 points, 21 points, 5 points. They play Louisville this week. But he if you're desperate for a tight end, he's definitely one to look at. This next guy I feel much better about if I'm having to roll him out there every week. He was in our 2020 players, and he is 0% owned. I'm sure it's not 0.0, but it's obviously 0.4 or worse. And that's Gavin Harris, New Mexico State. 8 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 12 points, 8 points, and 7 points. He is on a bye this week, but I wanted to mention him because he's pretty consistent, pretty steady, which, if you need someone at tight end, that's kind of what you're looking for. And so I'd be going out and snatching Gavin Harris from New Mexico State. What do you got, Luke?
All right. I've got 2 tight ends. I've got a ceiling play and a floor play. My floor play is Houston Thomas, 28% owned. They have Colorado State, Houston Thomas, the UTSA tight end. Like I said, 28% owned. He's had 4.2 points against Texas A&M, 7.6 points against Texas State, and then 5.6 points against Incarnate Ward. He's had 3 targets, 7 targets, 3 targets, 22 yards, 36 yards, 26 yards. Just seems like to be that steady Eddie. Colorado State has allowed 4 receptions, 20 yards to the Washington tight end, Decker DeGroff. It's harder. It's not like the NFL where they use the tight end to do this and that. Like the college is so much different. That's why I wanted to look at my ceiling play in the same game. Colorado State tight end, Jackson Warren. Jackson Warren, I just can't stop him. I don't know what it is. I just can't stop him. 25% owned. Again, they have UTSA. I just can't shake the 6 reception or the 6 receptions on 11 targets for 79 yards and a touchdown against Washington week 1. Again, Northern Colorado have no idea what happened. He had 1 reception on 4 targets, 16 yards. That 16 yards was still 3rd on the team in receiving, and I want to believe that was an anomaly for the game. Warren's 11.5 ADOT is something that you like to see, especially given how hard it is to find streaming tight end options like you mentioned, Justice. I think Jackson Warren is a ceiling play, and you might be able to use him all season long. I want to tune into this game to see how he gets utilized in this game. But those are my tight ends for the week. And that is the week 3 G5 waiver wire honey.
If you're still watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. On X, please give us a follow. If you're listening on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, please subscribe and leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. We're so grateful for everyone and all the support that we've gotten this year. It's been really amazing. Be sure to join us again next week as we discuss what happened in week 4, and we look forward to what's coming in week 5. And as always, bring you up to date on the latest news and happenings in the world of G5 college football. So until then, we are the G5 Hive.